Hi guys. So I've been wanting to do a video about this for a while. Just about MDMA in general, my experience with it over the years. So I think MDMA can be a amazing drug, and it's not really even a matter of opinion anymore. It seems like, there's more and more research coming out about its utility as a therapeutic drug and things like that. And I think long before doctors started using it in that way, people were using it in that way independently. And I certainly used it in that way over the years and got a lot of benefit out of it. And it can be a really fun experience. However, I think it also has the potential to cause a lot of harm, I think. And I've both seen and experienced that. So I started taking it, I guess I was 19, and I had some with a friend, and he had a gram of really good quality MDMA, and we split this gram, and I just didn't, I didn't read anything online back then. I was really reluctant to take advice on stuff and to do things properly. And I'd go on some of the drug subreddits and stuff, and the MDMA subreddits, and people would be like, you should fucking weigh your drugs, and you should take X amount, and you should do this. And I was just like, fuck all of you, this is, whatever. And anyway, we took, we split the gram, basically, which is a lot. If it's pure MDMA, there's really no reason to have half a gram. It's way too much. And that set a precedent for me. I just thought, that's what you do. You get a gram and you split it between two people, And we just, we didn't go to a rave or anything. I've never done that. I've never been into that kind of thing. We just walked around the park and shit and took it. And again, that also set the precedent for me of, that's how you do it, you just, hang out with a mate and you talk. And it's easy to talk. You can talk about things you don't normally talk about. You don't feel embarrassed or ashamed. You feel good about yourself. You feel happy. You feel full of love. You feel physically amazing on it. I mean, it really felt good, and it felt very liberating, especially because my lifestyle at that time was very quiet and repressed, and smoking a lot of weed and being very unhappy and feeling very bad about my position in life and just being very lonely. So doing this was the complete antithesis of that. And so he didn't live where I lived. I think I went back to the small town I had lived in for a while. I went back there and hung out with him there, and then I went back home to London, and I had a friend there, and I got him into it, and we then started doing it pretty much every weekend. And I wanted to do it even more. He really enjoyed it, but he was a bit reluctant to get into it. And I was like, this is amazing. Trust me, it will change your life and shit. And then he started to really love it. But he does not have, I think he has a bit less of that desperation that I guess I have and certainly had back then. So he was a bit more sensible about it and was often I think this is enough now. I think we can stop redosing and go to sleep, or I think we should have a break and not do it this weekend and stuff. And I was always it's fine, man, don't be stupid, it's fine. And I didn't have any basis for saying that. I just said it. I just thought, it's fine, because I want it to be, because I just don't want to think about the consequences. I just want to feel good. And in fairness, I'm painting it in a negative light now in hindsight, but and I'm sort of jumping ahead, but the experience me and him had on it, or the multiple experiences me and him had on it over an extended period, were incredible. In a way, kind of absurd, obviously, fucking pouring sweat and gurning crazily, and just walking around the suburb we lived in all hours of the morning, just chatting absolute shit. And then the next day, on no sleep, and just being being unable to move, smoking loads of weed, watching dumb shows about animals, eating shitty food and stuff, and it was just, yeah, it was absurd, but really, like, we really got to know each other really well. And prior to that, we'd just been like people who smoke weed together, and we sometimes had, I would say, like a slightly tense relationship before that. We didn't know each other that well. We just happened to live in the same town, and there was no one else there really, and neither of us had other friends, and we just used to smoke weed and hang out, and like we sometimes had a slightly tense or hostile even relationship. Like, I think we used to like pinch bits of weed from each other and shit, like give each other, like, I know I did anyway, like, you know, if I would pick up for us, I would like take some out and stuff. You know, we weren't like super close friends, and we became really fucking close from doing MDMA together, and we got to know each other really well, and both came out of ourselves a lot. Like I was doing music then, but it was like a secret. It was weird. I don't know why I was so weird about it, but I was like embarrassed for some reason, and it was like a secret, and I would, like, you know, I'd be able to then, like, you know, show people my music and stuff on it, and I'd feel, well, just him really. I didn't know anyone else at the time, and we would just talk about whatever, like, you know, bad things that happen in our lives, personal issues and stuff, and our like social discomfort and all of this stuff. So it was really amazing in a way. But yeah, the come downs were really bad. Like, after a while, at first it was alright, but after a while it would be like, you know, by the Tuesday or Wednesday you'd just be feeling like shit, and that would kind of make you want to do it again. And anyway, after some time I met my girlfriend, now my ex-girlfriend, who she moved in with me really early on. It was all a bit like mad, basically, and we started doing it all the time, and she was a bit more like me in the sense that she wanted to do it a lot. Not as bad, in some ways worse, but she was, you know, more like, she was more inclined to say, like, okay, let's not do it this weekend, or I don't want to do it tonight, you know, I've got work next week, or let's, you know. But when we were on it, she was very much like me. Like, she didn't want it to end. If we ran out, she would just want to drink like loads of energy drinks and like just do whatever we could to, like, you know, keep going. And there's something very depressing about that, I think, because you're like desperately hanging on to this thing that makes you feel good, and the rest of your life is unbearable sometimes by comparison, or it was in ways for us. And it was so nice to feel happy and to feel good and free, and like, I know not everyone goes around like feeling really fucking happy all the time, but I think at times we were like particularly unhappy compared to, you know, the average person, and had a lot of like grief and problems and shit, and it was really good, and it was hard it was hard to let go. And so, yeah, again, ignoring all advice, we used to just do half a gram each every time. I was like probably better able to handle it in a sense, and she was younger than me, and I feel like I dragged her into my problems, my addiction problems, and everything else, and we both became very emotionally dependent on it, basically, and that went on for a really long time, and it was almost every weekend. I'd say probably every 1.5 weekends, you know, for like maybe a bit more than that at times, to be fair, for years. And I'd been doing it for a long time before that, and then before that I'd been doing all this other shit when I was younger, like, you know, Mephedrone and stuff. So I think my brain was getting pretty fried, and that did happen. I started to go crazy. I became very angry, very depressed, very dysfunctional and weird. And the thing about drug addiction and mental illness and stuff that people don't talk about is how weird it makes you. It's not just in this sort of romanticized and sympathetic way where you become kind of like desperate for drugs. It's like you become weird, in my opinion. Not all the time, obviously, but like a lot of the time you become weird and fucked up, and it changes your personality in weird ways that you might not imagine. And I became very dysfunctional. I don't know how to describe it. There's not an easy, simple way to describe it. Lots of different weird behaviours started to emerge. A lot of those were just me, I'm sure. Like, I'm not blaming it all on drugs or anything, but it exacerbated everything, and it stopped us ever being able to find our footing in life and start to become more normal, because every weekend we were on this, so we were out of action for like 2 or 3 days completely, and then all week we were like on a come down. She'd be going to work. I didn't really work at that time. And it was a bad situation. We were in house shares and stuff, and we were like, a really, like, as dysfunctional as a couple can be, literally. Like, I mean it. Like, we were as dysfunctional as a couple can be, like, pretty much, you know, within reason. But basically, yeah, we were like, it was bad. It was a really bad situation, and it progressed into being a really seriously bad time in our lives that both of us still have trouble like talking about and thinking about. I've tried doing this video like 3 times, and it's not like I can't talk about it or something, but it just is it's just depressing, basically. I don't know how to describe it. It just doesn't feel good to talk about. Like, I enjoy doing these videos normally, but I don't enjoy talking about this, but I've just been wanting to for ages, and I just think today I should just do it. It's not, I don't mean like, you know, it's so bad that I'm like, you know, that I'm like unable to talk about it, or it's not like that. It's just, yeah, it's just not pleasant. It's just a bad vibe, you know, just remembering it. Whenever we remember the place we lived in, well, we lived in a few different places during that time, but whenever we remember those places, we just like shiver and like feel sick and have bodily reactions to those memories, some of which are related to the drug itself. The smell of it and stuff, like, I think the smell of it makes everybody gag, to be fair, but there's just more and more I began to become physically disgusted by it, but mentally dependent on it. And yeah, and again, I mean, we got some good out of it, me and her. I would say probably less so than me and my friend, and I think it was not what either of us needed at that time in our lives. I'd probably had enough of those experiences, and I think she needed more calm in her life, and it was very ugly. And I was drinking a lot. I used to drink shitloads. I used to drink so much, like, well, I don't know what so much is, but I used to drink every night, basically. I was like always drunk, smoking weed all day, drunk all day, doing MDMA most weekends, and we became just, I don't know, yeah, it was very bad, basically. Terrible fights, and like, she as well, she became extremely aggressive and angry, and we would have insane arguments in shared accommodation that would sometimes go on for 8 hours. I mean, literally, you know, we had arguments that went on that long, and we had over the years, like, we were lucky not to be thrown out or arrested or whatever else, and we were just both really fucking sad, basically. Like, I think that was where most of it came from, and we had a lot of bad things going on around us at the time. And yeah, anyway, we became over time more sensible, and we would use it a bit more occasionally, and she would find that she had a lot of behavioural issues at the time. We both did, definitely. I think she had less control than I did, and she was more, I could flip out like quite badly, and I was like very nasty. Like I was like, I've been like, I don't know, I've done and said so many like bad things over the years, that I really regret, but it wasn't that I guess she was more consistent. She had more of a consistent difficulty in like controlling her behavior, and was much more of a instigator. You know, she wasn't as like, well, she was as reactionary as I was, but she also had a tendency to kind of instigate things. And she would have a lot of trouble after we did it. You know, we stopped doing it quite so much, and she would have a lot of trouble afterwards, like controlling her behavior, and it would like be really stressful to be around, and just caused a lot of stress, and a lot of problems. So she became, you know, less keen to want to do it, and I often still did. And we started trying to find other ways of doing it. You know, supplementation regimens, and there's nootropics you can take with it that seemingly mitigate some of the neurotoxicity and stuff. But I think it got a bit beyond that point with us, to be honest. And I think it gets to a point where when you've done it so much, A, it doesn't really work anymore, and B, it just makes you feel terrible when you take it. And I know at that time it had a serious effect on us mentally. I don't know how long lasting that effect was. I don't know if that, how much of that is still present. I feel like kind of okay. I've always been a bit like, never been like completely even emotionally anyway, so I don't know. I definitely can feel like happy and stuff, you know. And I, you know, we have a laugh and shit, so I feel like I'm like somewhat okay, certainly a lot better than I was then. Feel fairly sharp. My memory is decent, so I don't know. Yeah, I maybe I would be much better off than I am now. Maybe it did have some kind of long-term effect. I don't know, but anyway, we neither of us really. So, you know, sure. I guess the way we look at it is like, if you learn from things like that, you can maybe take something that's a bit bigger than just, you know, the effect it has on your brain chemistry, depending on how far you went with it, and how much damage you did to yourself. I definitely think it has the potential for long-term harm. I think there are people who abused it way heavier than we did, and some of those people seemingly took years to recover, if they ever did, anecdotally speaking. So, yeah, it's something I think should be handled with extreme care, like extreme care. And part of the problem, in my opinion, is that people are not educated properly about drugs, because all of that education comes from people who are basically lying and who are wrong, and who tell you it's okay to drink alcohol, but it's not okay to smoke weed. And that is insane and idiotic. And everybody who's ever done drugs knows that that is insane and idiotic. So you start down that path, and not only do you not trust those people, but you just, I think most people develop a kind of fuck it mentality and just think like, no, all this stuff is good, and like, if it's, you know, it's like, it's all good for you, and it's all like, you know, you can have amazing experiences, and it's all, you become attached to the idea of it, and you can lose sense in that, and it's really important for people, I think, to talk rationally about drugs, and people who've done them to not like, I don't really like all this business of like swearing them off entirely and telling people you're an addict and you have to be sober forever. I know some people that is true, but you have to be sober forever and you should never touch anything and all drugs are bad and you should, I think that causes a lot of harm as well. So I think it's just important for people to talk rationally about drugs and be normal and down to earth, and like with their kids, and be like, you know, like, just be honest, like just be completely honest. There is basically nothing you can be apart from honest, because anything else is going to warp people's perceptions in one way or the other, and that pendulum could well swing back the other way, and or you can deter people from having really amazing experiences that can actually change their lives for the better. So I think it's I think there's a big problem with how we like approach drugs as a society and stuff. And you don't want to talk to anyone because they'll be like, if you talk to, if you tell someone when you're that age, if you tell someone who's not into that stuff, you tell someone who's into it, they're going to be like, fuck it, just carry on. And you tell someone who's not, someone who's older or like a parent or something, or they'll just be like, stop taking all that stuff, stop smoking weed, stop doing MDMA, stop, and it's not realistic for you at that time. So there's not really an option in terms of, well, there was an option. There was these communities online where people kind of intelligently discuss them and look at research and look at findings. And I don't have a reason for why I had such a bad attitude towards those people. They annoyed me. People on Reddit just kind of annoy me in general still to this day. There's a smug attitude on there, but it's not an excuse because they were right in everything that they said. And I just used to get annoyed at being like, kind of berated by them for my stupid choices. So so I don't now, neither of us really have any desire to do it anymore, because it just doesn't really work, and I think there's probably better ways to have that type of experience with less of the the downsides. And I think that will be the case more and more as time goes on. I think we're pretty lucky to be living in a time where like a lot of new drugs are being developed, and some of them are really interesting, and some of them seemingly you can like have a really good time and not have all of these downsides. So that's great. I knew of other people who lost their minds a little bit with MDMA. I heard stories secondhand, really bad stories about people who just went crazy, and it's really easy to do yourself in with, and it's not expensive, and it's, I don't know, it's a weird substance. I have weird feelings towards it. And the problem is, I think a lot of the people who need it the most are people who are the most unwilling to try it. And then a lot of the people who probably don't need it, who are more open, are people who are also open often to taking too much of it, or to just taking it full stop. So it's a shame in that way, because I don't want to dismiss it as a substance, because I think it has incredible potential and use, but the way in which it exists in our society, I think, is quite bad overall. I don't know if I'm allowing my negative personal experience to cloud my judgment with that. I guess a lot of people just use it once in a while, but I don't know. Yeah, to me, I don't know. Anyway, it's good that it's being used in therapeutic context. I think it'll be great for that. This video, I suppose, was a bit more about my situation, my relationship and stuff, more than MDMA maybe. I don't have a great deal of like factual information to share about it. All I would say is, if you've never used it and you're planning on using it, do not think of it as something that you can do regularly. Make a big event out of it. Make it a big deal, and make time for it that you can't make every weekend. Plan it properly. Make it, it's like 4 times a year maybe. Like, it's like a treat, and it's like a really fun thing to do. And you don't, anything more than that, you don't need it. You don't need to have an emotional relation to get all these things off your chest every week. You just don't need that. Like, it's a hugely cathartic thing that the benefits of that will last months and months, or it can last your whole life if you allow it to, and if you don't jeopardize it by overdoing it, and keep doses really minimal. Because if you start like I did at half a gram, you'll end up doing, I used to do 0.75, and then I would mix it with other stuff, and like just just be really, really, like, you know, thoughtful about it, and listen to the advice that people in the know give you on it, you know, on the subreddits and things, because there really is a lot of sense in what they say. And if you're using it a lot and you're in the situation I was in, where you're in a lot of denial about it, like, there's not much I can say, but just give yourself a few weeks and see how you feel, and I'm almost certain you'll feel a lot better after a few weeks off it. And another thing I wish I had done at the time was, and it sounds weird, and this is again the type of advice that like a person who doesn't take drugs would never give you, and which would have been good for me at the time, is like, try some other drugs, like not bad ones, but just plan some other weekends, you know, like it was kind of good in a way when I got into acid at first, because it was just something else to do, and I wasn't so fixated on this one substance. And I wish I had experimented a bit more with other, like, you know, relatively safe substances, so that my sole source of pleasure in life wasn't just doing MDMA at the weekend. You know, you can approach drugs in a smart way, and a lot of people are doing that now. A lot of people have very healthy, normal lives, and they have very well thought out modes of drug use, and it's not like, they're not like fiendish, and they're not addicted to things, and they have fun, and you can totally do that. It's entirely possible, not for everybody, but it is possible. And I just wish I had seen that a bit sooner, because I do like, you know, like exploring the possibilities of my mind and stuff. Like, I don't want that to ever not be a thing. But if you abuse things, you can get to a point, I think, where sobriety becomes kind of your only option. And so it's much better to be smart early on, and I think from as young of an age as possible, just be like sensible and mature about drugs. I know I sound like a dick, sorry, I'm not. I know like a lot of people listening to this know this and don't need to be told by me. I don't mean to sound like condescending, but it's just important to me, because I just look back at that stuff, and it was so it's so unpleasant to remember it and to look at it. We both look at it as two different people. We don't look at it as who we are now. We look at those as two different people who were just like trapped in their own shit. And it's sad to remember, and it's sad to think of how many people are in situations like that, and nobody really understands them, and they don't really understand themselves fully, and they don't know how much better their lives would be if they made slightly different choices. Because that's the thing, it's not a good life to be like that. It's not good. You get what you want, but what you want is not, you know, what you should have, or what you need, or what actually makes you happy. Yeah. Anyway, cool. All right. Thanks for watching, guys. If you made it this far, take care.